Alright, so today we're going to talk about histograms, which are kind of like bar graphs, but you're going to already notice, this is a histogram right here. You will notice that histograms are a little bit different from bar graphs, and we will talk about why they're different and the differences between them in a little bit. But before we get started, we are going to take a quick look at where this data may come from. Usually they come from frequency tables. Alright. So we will start out with this frequency table here. You can see that there is a list of names on the side, and then there are three sections to our frequency table. The first of which is an interval. An interval means a range of numbers, okay? So if you look down at the interval, it's not just 0, 1, 2, 3, right? It's 0 to 1, 2 to 3, 4 to 5, 6 to 7. So that would be our interval. Our interval here is we're basically counting by 2's in this. So let's go ahead and take a look at the list of names to the right and tally out how many letters in each name. So if we take a look at Michael, Michael has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 letters. So I'm going to give 6 to 7's interval 1 tally. Okay, and then we would go ahead and do Sheila. Sheila has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to give still the 6 to 7 interval. Okay, then if I take a look at Katie, Katie has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letters. So then I'm going to go to the 4 to 5 interval and give 4 to 5 a tally. Okay, I want you to continue doing this with each of the names until you have all the tallies complete. You probably want to go ahead and pause the video now so that you can do this uninterrupted. Alrighty, so your frequency table should look the exact same as mine by now if you've finished tallying out those names and then translating it into the frequency. Frequency just means the number. So you have your tallies and then the frequency is the actual number. Alright, so if we go ahead and move on, I would like you to do this on your own. So it says you are judging a paper airplane contest. Each contestant flies his or her paper airplane 20 times. Make a frequency table using the data below. Alright, so you see our interval off to the side. Okay. If you're wondering what that interval is, it's going by 2.9. So 10 to 12.9, there's 2.9. And then 13 to 15.9, 2.9. So it increases an interval by 2.9. So go ahead and take a look at the 20 airplane feet measures and put them into your tallies and then total them out. Raise your hand when you're done doing that to get it checked. Moving right along, we are going to use those frequency tables in order to make a histogram. We can really make a histogram from different types of graphs, from maybe a line plot you might also see, or just a set of data. But basically, a histogram is a type of bar graph that shows the frequency of data values in intervals of the same size. It does not have space between the bars. So there's two main differences. The first one would be, yes, there are gaps in a bar graph and there are no gaps in a histogram. So each of those bars are touching. Okay, the second really big difference between the two is that we use intervals in histograms. Okay, so we're going to label this our bar graph, and this would be our histogram. And again, intervals just means like a number range. Okay, and it's very important where it says intervals of the same size. We don't want to have a histogram that goes from 0 to 5 and then 6 to 20, right? That wouldn't be an even interval. Alright, so if you flip your paper over to the back, we're going to look specifically at a histogram and the parts of the histogram first. There is still a title and an X and Y axis. So I want you to go ahead and circle the title. The title will be runs scored by the Yankee players and from that time frame. And then label the X and the Y. So if we think about a coordinate plane, this is really just quadrant 1. So your X-axis is still horizontal and your Y-axis is vertical. Notice that on the X-axis, we're looking at number of runs scored. So the Y-axis is the number of players that scored those runs, okay? And then take a look here. Right here on the x-axis is my interval. So 0 to 14, 15 to 19, 30 to 44. If we were to interpret this graph, we would look at this bar right here and say, okay, well, 0 to 14 runs were scored by 11 players. That's how we're interpreting it. Okay, now if we look at number 2, identify the interval. That just means what are we counting by? So intervals can be a little tricky. It looks like there's 14 spaces, 14 numbers represented in that interval, but actually 0 counts. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's 15 numbers, okay? So we're counting by 15s. If you look at 15 to 29, that's 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. That's 15 numbers. All right, now number 3 says label the top of each interval with the number of players. So we have 11, 2, 1, 2, and 4. Notice that the 11 and the 1 are halfway to that even number. And then the last one, 75 to 89, is just going to be 0. Okay, number 4, how many players scored 30 to 44 runs? So let's look at the interval 30 to 44. How many players scored 30 to 44 runs? Just 1. Number 5, how many players scored 75 to 89 runs? Actually, on yours it should say, I meant to make this correction, 60, maybe, there we go, 60 to 89 runs. Okay, so we're looking at these 2 intervals here. So we would say, okay, well, 4, put this all back, and 0. 4 plus 0 would just be 4 people. Number 6, how many players were included total? That would be you just adding up all those numbers. So it's nice and easy because you already have them written up at the top of your of each bar. So 11 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 4. What would that be? Go ahead and add that up. All right, so that should be 20 players included in this histogram. And lastly, the 7th question says, we call the interval 75 to 89 a blank interval when there are no, when there's no data. There's 0. There's the histogram bar is just at the 0 line. We call that a gap interval. We still need to include it, especially if there's data that continues on after that. It's very important to not just skip over it. It just means that no player scored 75 to 89 runs. That's all that means. All right, so now we're going to actually create our own histogram. Okay, so it says the frequency table shows the pairs of shoes that each person in a class owns. Display the data in a histogram. They already gave you the frequency table. You see the interval is 1 to 3. Okay, so that means 1, 2, and 3. So we're counting by 3s. 4 to 6, again, it looks like 2 numbers, but 4, 5, 6, that's 3 numbers included. Okay, step 1, label the axes in the title. I don't care what you label the title, as long as it has something to do with pairs of shoes, or number of shoes, or shoe histogram. So I'm going to just write pairs of shoes. Student shoes, it's really up to you. Okay, and then it says label the X and Y axes. So the X axis is going to be this right here. So the number of pairs of shoes. And then the y-axis, that's going to be our frequency right here. So that means like how many people have those shoes. So you could write frequency, but sometimes it's helpful to write what the frequency in this particular problem means. So number of people who have that many pairs of shoes. All right, so we're not done labeling the x and the y-axis. We still need to actually label our intervals, and then our y-axis, how many people, the frequency. So our interval's already made for us. It's not always going to be, but it's nice and easy since it's already made. So 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12, and 13 to 15. Now on the y-axis, there's not a whole lot of bars, so we can count by 2s. So 0 to 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, all the way up to 12. So if we have any odd numbers, they're going to go halfway up the bar. All right, so now we're going to actually put in the data, okay? So people who have 1 to 3 pairs of shoes. How many people have 1 to 3 pairs of shoes? Well, if we look at our frequency table, 11 people have 1 to 3 pairs of shoes. So I'm going to draw my bar all the way up to 11. Okay, make sure it's all the way nice and straight, and then you can shade it in if you like, so that you can see it. Okay, 4 to 6. In my interval of people who have 4 to 6 pairs of shoes, there are only 4. Again, make sure that bar is touching the other. 7 to 9 would be my gap interval. There's no data. Nobody has 7 to 9 pairs of shoes. And then people who have 10 to 12 pairs of shoes, there are 3 people who have 10 to 12 pairs of shoes. So we're going to go halfway up to 4. And lastly, 13 to 15 people, we have 6 people who have 13 to 15 shoes. Okay, so my histogram should pretty much look like this. If you want to go ahead and write the totals on top of each bar, just so it's a little helpful, you can certainly do that. All right, and then we'll answer the questions at the bottom. All right, so the first question there, how many total people were surveyed? I want you to go ahead and add up all of the people to figure out how many total people were surveyed. So if we look back to our histogram, we're going to add up 11, 4, 0, 3, and 6, and we would have a total of 24 people. Number 2 says find the median interval. So from a histogram, we cannot find the median because we don't know the exact data because we used intervals, right? So in the shoe example, it said that 11 people owned 1 to 3 pairs of shoes. So we don't know if all 11 people owned 1 pair, 2 pairs, 3 pairs. Maybe 6 people owned 1 pair and 5 people owned 3 pairs. We don't know the exact data. So we actually can't find some of the measures of central tendency. So we can't find the mean, mode, or range, or the median from this. But what we can find is what's called the median interval. So what I would like you to do is, now mine looks a little crazy, a little messy, but I would like you to draw tallies over each of the bars that represents how many tallies that bar is worth. So for interval 1 to 3, you're going to give it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 tallies because there are 11 people who have 1 to 3 pairs of shoes. For 4 to 6, I want you to give it 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 to 9, nothing. 1, 2, 3 for 10 to 12, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for 13 to 15. Now, in order to find the median interval, we're going to do something very similar to when we find the median. We're going to start with 1 tally on the 1 to 3 interval and 1 tally on the 13 to 15. So the furthest out tallies, and then keep going in. So 2, and the third one. Okay, so now we're keep going. You're going to do this, crossing off 1 each time until there is only 1 or 2 left in the middle. Okay, so we see that we end up in the interval 4 to 6, so that means the interval 4 to 6 is our median interval. Okay, and if that didn't really make any sense, you can ask me if you want me to explain it again. And then number 3, can you find the mean, mode, or range? Nope. Not from this data, not from a histogram, because again, it uses intervals, so we don't really know the true data. Number 4, how many students own more than 9 shoes? So let's look at back at our graph here. So more than 9 shoes would be these 2 bars. So 3 plus 6. So how many people own more than 9 shoes? Well, 9. And now, you are also going to be asked for percentages from histograms. So it says, number 5 says, what percent of students own 4 to 6 pairs of shoes? So looking back at my histogram, 4 people own 4 to 6 pairs of shoes. Okay? So 4 people own 4 to 6 pairs of shoes. Now we're going to make a fraction comparing the part to the whole. So the whole would be the total number of people in the graph. So 4 people own 4 to 6 shoes. How many did we say there were total from our graph? Well, there's 24 people altogether. So 4 out of 24. If I divide 4 divided by 24, I'm going to get 0.16 repeating, so that's 16.6 repeating percent. That's how many people, that's what percentage of students own 4 to 6 pairs of shoes. All right, number 6, do most people own 1 to 3 pairs of shoes? Now this word most is bold, in bold because most means 50% or more. Okay, so let's take a look at turning how many people own 1 to 3 shoes into a percentage. So let's see, 1 to 3 people, 11 people own 1 to 3 pairs of shoes. How many total people were there? Well, there was 24. So if you convert 11 over 24 into a decimal, it's going to give you 0.45. So 45%. Is that 50% or higher? Can I say that most people own 1 to 3 shoes? No, I cannot, because it's not 50% or higher. And the last question, number 7, is what is the interval 7 to 9 called? If you look back at 7 to 9, there was no data in there. We talked about that earlier. If there's no data, we call it a gap interval. And that is a vocabulary term you will need to know. All right, so that's pretty much it for today's notes. I would recommend that you use the notes as you move forward on the reflection. And good luck. Great job.